1. We are live. Well, thank you guys for joining us for our 7-Eleven committee meeting. As you all know, our task is to evaluate the Marshall School site. And we've been meeting for, is this our 4th or 5th time now? Can't keep track. I feel like I see you guys so often. But we are going to go ahead and get our meeting started. So our agenda for today, where did it go? Goodness. There we go. So our roll call, we're going to call the meeting to order at 4:09 p.m. And roll call is Liz Fisher. Here. Sharon Coco.
Here.
Jeff Downey.
Here.
Noli Del Rosario.
Here.
Karina Sanmiego.
I'm here.
Felix Lechner.
Present.
Marcus Battle.
Here.
And Mr. Reese Gain. And myself, Kelly Lynch McMahon. Excuse me. So if you guys would like to take a moment, we did forward you all the previous meeting minutes. And we'll just take a minute or two for you guys to review those. And if there's any comments, corrections, clarifications, please let me know.
Kelly, this is Felix. I did have an opportunity to look at the minutes, but I'd like to abstain from the vote since I wasn't present.
Okay.
Please. And I on that note, my apologies. I had a lot of things going on that day, and I didn't mean to keep you hanging.
No
Sorry, I
worries.
wasn't there.
Were there any questions that you did have on the information that was shared?
I didn't. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Is everyone just about leaving? Okay, I would like to go ahead and have someone propose a motion to approve the minutes.
I will move to approve the minutes from the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
That was Noli?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the meeting minutes are approved as submitted. Okay. Let's see. On our agenda, excuse me, is where'd you go? It's right in front of my face. Is the a review of the draft templates for recommendation. So as you all know, we had a very active discussion last meeting in terms of looking at what our options were. And Karina has agreed to share with us some templates for us to review as to how we want to go ahead and prepare our recommendations that we are going to be presenting to the board. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let's see if I can pull these things up. For us to go ahead and just start taking a look at some of the templates. So the templates are, one is an example from Sweetwater Unified School District. A second is from Poway Unified School District. And a third is from Oakland Unified School District. And all of these are past recommendations that are not current to 2020. So I believe that it's okay for us to be looking at this information. And I did verify that these are on these school districts' websites. So we're not, using information that's confidential or, not public. So let me go ahead and share it now. Let's see. that. Can everyone see my screen? Looks like a bunch of folders and then the 4 examples.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take Sweetwater first. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so look, Karina, did you have any comments that you wanted to talk about these before we started reviewing them?
So I wanted to provide this group with 3 different types of reports, and there's also, variations of these, but I tried to provide one that is very succinct and gets to the point. I try to provide one that's very comprehensive and provides more of an overview of the facilities and future usage, very comprehensive, as well as kind of, it actually looks like a legal brief, including, legislative history and such. And then there's a middle ground as well. But in the end, I think what is the same in all of these is, despite how much information we put around it, in the end we just have to provide that one recommendation to the board, and you'll see that the recommendations are, this is, we plus, and that's all it is. But it's just the amount of information you want to provide to the board in order for them to make a determination as to, in order to accept your recommendations and how to proceed. So,
Is there
but
one
yeah.
in particular that you'd like for us to start with first?
Well, you started with the good one. Sweetwater is the short one. So I think that's a good one to start with, so you can see what a kind of a basic report looks like.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and go back to it. Okay, there you go. So here's the Sweetwater Union High School District.
Mm-hmm.
This is dating all the way back to 2017. It looks like they have an executive summary, purpose of the committee, charge of the committee,
Mm-hmm.
then the community membership, which is the standard stuff that we have on our website as well. The members' names are listed, and summary of work for the committee, detailing public notification of the committee hearings. And then here's the main thing that we want to focus on is the committee findings and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like they just did it in bullet format. It doesn't look like they really, oh, they did do somewhat of a summary of their items. But these are kind of similar to some of the things that we're experiencing. So the committee finds that despite renewed development in the east and south within the district boundaries, district enrollment is expected to slightly decline. That's very similar to what we have going on. Residential development in the west portion of the district will not generate the need to use Third Avenue site for school. That is something that we are in the process of determining. The location of the Third Avenue site in downtown Chula Vista is not ideal location for a school site. That, of course, doesn't apply to us because it was a school before. And the approximate 2.59 acres on 3rd Street is too small to house all central district functions. Oh, so it looks like they were looking at using it for district office use.
Right.
So here they've identified what their findings are. And then the next paragraph is their actual recommendation. So it's just they're declaring it surplus and that there's a need to sell to provide revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where we are in our evaluation.
One of our unique reasons for looking at the Marshall site has been because of the pipeline.
Yes.
I think that it's important to include the date when that was discovered and it was brought before the board, and when they canceled plans for the SDI program.
So Karina, do we want to refer to the pipeline or do we want to refer to the board's action with regard to the pipeline?
So I think that's what it would be, is the board's action and the supporting information that they had and that they reveal at open session.
Okay.
Okay, so let me make sure I get this right. So we refer to the board's action on this issue and the information they shared with regard to their decision?
Yes, is that something you could go back into the board documents and locate for us, Kelly?
Uh-huh.
Or is Sharon on? I can't. Oh, there's Sharon. And kind of pull the whatever was supporting that agenda item, and maybe we can see what was provided back then.
I will go in and look again. As of yesterday, I was not able to put my finger on a meeting date. So I
Okay.
might have to check with Patty.
Okay.
Okay. And Sharon, I may be able to help you with that meeting date. So if I find it, I will email you.
Perfect. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. And is there anything else that you recommend that we should include in our recommendation? Should we also do the legislative language that we originally started our meetings with, where I shared California legislative requirements with the committee?
Right. And I think it's important to note too that there's a special circumstance with the law currently that money that comes from the sale of a property doesn't necessarily have to go into the capital fund or into a facilities fund. That there's been allowances made for that money to go into the general fund.
And Marcus, do you remember what that new policy is that's available for us to do that?
Well, I don't know the actual, it's not
SB
policy.
98.
Yeah, there you go. Kathy, Kathy got it.
I had it in my notes.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And that's that funds can be put into the general fund for surplus. Surplus can be put into the general fund instead of facilities.
Right.
But I would say, if I just might add something, that I would think that has to could as well to be added, but that really is not the big factor in the decision. There's two big factors in the decision: declining enrollment and the fact that the board has decided that it's not safe for Fremont students. Those are the two preeminent things.
Okay.
The fact that it's 98 or whatever it is allows us to do it could be further along, like the Sweetwater has, saying funds can be used for blah, 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 blah.
Okay. And FUSD decided not to use it in the school due to safety.
Kelly, is this for the board presentation or what is this for?
This is us just going over what the summary of our recommendations are and the key points that we want to focus on in when we present what our recommendation is.
Oh.
So unfortunately, last meeting, we went through the Dutra report, which showed us the lease options, sale options, comparable sales. And I believe he also spoke to the entitlement process and what would be necessary for it. And we had, kind of discussed it amongst ourselves and went back and forth over the pros and cons. And we decided that entitlement was not really the best option for us in this particular situation. And so we drifted away from that and said, let's purely look at what is the ability to, what option will provide the district the ability to have the best option for future use or use of funds. And so that's kind of what we're now kind of working our way through is, okay, now that we've made these sort of high level discussions happen, what does our report now need to look like and what does it need to reflect in it? So
the only reason why I spoke up, Kelly, is because I think that focusing on the reasons for the disposition isn't necessarily helpful or required. I think that the fact that the school district simply doesn't need this property is the most important part. I would make no statements with respect to the pipeline, really,
Okay,
because we're not experts in it, and the buyer will have to look at that themselves. And it should be part of the disclosures, but
Actually, I disagree with
Okay.
you because I think this is for a different point that you're making than for a buyer. And this is not just for a buyer. This is a publication that the school district makes, and the school district decided that they did not want to assume risk related to the pipeline for this property. And that is part of it. If you leave that off, I believe then you open it up again within the entire school district community going, we've got a school in this neighborhood and we want our kids to go to this school. So you have to figure out what is the intended purpose and primary audience for this particular document. Pardon me, sorry.
Jeff, you have your hand up?
I do this time. So Felix, I just kind of think it's important to add this. When we met last time, because of the pipeline, the board had determined that we were not going to put a school there, right? And so this committee that was here last time when we met, agreed if we're never going to put a school on that property, then we need to dispose of the property. Because we didn't want to be landlords, we don't want to get into all that other stuff. If it's never going to be a school and the board has made it clear, then we need to move forward with getting rid of the property.
maybe all I wanted to say, Jeff, is that we shouldn't speak as to the danger of the pipeline because we're not experts in it. That's all I was saying.
Well, I absolutely agree, Felix, but I think what I'll confer with Karina later, but I think it is important for us to provide perspective on why the board made their decision, but not to delve into the details of it. Because, of course, there's multiple layers that we can dig down, and we don't really want to open up Pandora's box, but we do need to let the public know that there was an evaluation done and they made the decision based on a risk assessment as the district as a whole versus, well, we just, we don't want this property. It's like, no, we actually evaluated it because we felt there was a risk and the risk outweighed the value for us to continue to use it. And so then that leaves the door for people, if they want to delve further, they can, but we're keeping it very high level and just focusing mainly on the board action and not on the risk itself. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, earlier we started this discussion talking about the 3 different formats of the report. Impression that we will decide first on which type of report do we want,
Correct.
whether it is the direct approach, the somewhere in between, and the more elaborate one. Then we wander into the contents of the report.
Well,
I think we should focus first on, let's decide what format do we want of that content.
Well, I think it's important, Noli, for us to make sure that we define what our reasons are as to why we're making our decision. And I am going to move forward into the overall discussion of the format, but I think for what we were talking about, I think it was important for us to pinpoint our reasons so that as we go through these different formats, our reasons are not going to change. We're just going to basically put them in the whatever format we end up choosing. But it was definitely helpful to have those defined so that we're not like talking over and over again of the same thing. So, but thank you for reminding me.
I'm not disagreeing. We have to agree on what that report should include. And I'm just saying, I think let's keep the thought as originally you have intended.
Okay. Liz, you had your hand up?
Yeah. To get back to reasons, I think when we looked at the Dutra report, which should also be included, of course, they recommended that the best use was that it become a school, at least as a school. And yet with declining enrollment, so the last thing you want to do is open up the possibilities of a charter or private school opening up in your district and then stealing some of your students. So not to mention also, of course, the very fact that if the district didn't find it suitable, it would not seem right that they would pass it off to a private entity to be used in the same way. But in terms of the report, I looked at the Oakland one and they go into, talking about the Brown Act and all these other kinds of things. And I don't know if I think that's belaboring the point. I think talking about what our committee is and the history leading up to the formation of the committee, and then some of the legislative support for what our duties are, and what the possibilities are if this is surplus as a for sale surplus.
Okay, well, let's go to the next one. Do we have any other comments or questions on the Sweetwater?
Sharon,
No? Okay.
Sharon has had her hands raised for like 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sharon. I didn't see your hand raised. I'm sorry.
It's not a problem at all. I just wanted to say that I think that for perspective, we have to keep in mind, and as Liz said, the district wanted that site back because they needed it for a school, prepared to open a school, and people in that community know that. So they also know that the board made this decision based on a risk assessment, as you said. But the fact that at particular point in time, it was deemed necessary to have that site to house the SDI program into one location. I mean, we had it rented out and we pulled it back because we needed the site. So.
Okay. I'm just making note of that.
Kathleen, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to
Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
just want to make a point. That may be true, but there's the Rick School that the district purchased back that is about a half a mile away from the Marshall School. So it's a site over there that is, they purchased or did stop the lease of, I think in 2017, and that's just sitting there. So it's not as if there's not a number of vacant school buildings in that general area.
Just to know that the Rick site is set aside for Glinkler too. So they're expanding one of the other programs and it's going into the Rick site. I haven't heard anything different from that. They already had a plan for that when they brought it back.
But
Right.
okay, when did you last hear plan? I mean, plans come and they go, but I have noted that they did get a hold of that school again. So I don't know.
So just
Kelly,
for
you know for better how far we're going.
Yeah, just for your info, Kathy, we are moving forward with opening that site back up, and it's due to undergo modernization and renovation this spring. So we are actively working on renovating and making that site available for students the fall of 2021. We're crossing our fingers, of course, that we make our schedule, but when you have old buildings like that, it's always Pandora's box. But the goal is to have it available for instruction fall of 21. And let's cross our fingers we're not in a pandemic at that time either, where we won't be able to have the students on site, but that is the plan. And there is a board presentation on the update of that in January. So if you wanted to get more information, we'll be talking about it at that particular board meeting.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yes, Liz.
Well, as much as we still are looking for a site for the Spanish dual immersion, we do have the Williamson site committed to build. And I know there's been talk about possibly using Lila Bringhurst as a location for SDI. And yet, as you know, it's reserved for the developers. So that can only happen with renegotiation, I'm imagining. But if we have other sites in which to build a school, maybe there's potential for our program needs.
Okay. I will make note of that. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, well, let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to try and be mindful of our time as well. Let's see. So the next one we're going to look at is the Poway Unified School District. There's also looks to be a very short report. They did their table of contents, and same thing, they did an introduction that talked about the school and the school district. Then they talked about their committee members and the requirements and demographics of it. Here is the overview of the sites that they were reviewing. They had quite a few. And then here is their meeting information. Here's the criteria that they used for consideration. Looks like they looked at the projected student enrollment, obtaining community input for surplus space, determination for the need for surplus space in schools, and providing a report and recommendation to the board regarding potential surplus space in real property. Here are their findings. They said the district can accommodate the current enrolled of the district as well as long-term enrollment projected by district staff and consultants without the need for or use of the identified vacant sites for school facilities. Our RPAC then voted 8-0 to recommend the board that the sites are not needed for school facilities and should be declared surplus pursuant to the requirements of the Ed Code. And then they have some exhibits, and then their final recommendation, the RPAC recommends the board find and declare all the sites surplus as they are not currently needed for school purposes and are not anticipated to be needed in the foreseeable future. And then let's take a look at their, oh, they didn't have the exhibits shared. But this one was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, Kelly, I wanted to present this one because it has the, you know, the bones of what should be in a report, and all the additional and the supplemental information is attached as an exhibit. So
Okay.
if someone's just looking for the information, it's here. But if they want to look at the minutes or if they want to look at the community hearing,
Sure.
then they can look at the exhibits. So
Okay.
which you'll see is different from the next example, which has everything within the document, and it's really hard to read, I think, but this is just another way of presenting it.
So are there any questions on this particular document that you guys wanted to discuss or expound upon? I actually like this one. This was pretty cut clean and straightforward. And since we only have one parcel we're dealing with in this particular recommendation, I like the short, the sweet, and to the point. And I like the fact that we can add the exhibits, you know, separate documents and not have to belabor through all of those to get to what the findings would be. What are you all's thoughts?
Seems good.
Yeah, I think it's a succinct report.
Noli or Kathleen or Felix? Okay.
No, I want to hear some more. I was looking at my screen on the 3 different types, and I was looking for the ones, which one's the middle ground, or is that the one that you're talking about with exhibits?
I consider this one the middle ground because it has all the key information, and then all the exhibits, it's attached at in the end.
I thought,
But it's pretty comprehensive. You get to pick and choose, right? How much you want to read.
that's right. Anyway, perhaps let's see the one with a more detailed, more elaborate one, and let's decide between
Okay.
the 3 types.
Well, let me go ahead and get that one for you guys. Excuse me. I'm going to close this guy out. So here is the Oakland Unified report, which is 205 pages long. Ooh. So let's go to their table of contents and see where we want to delve into. So they have a letter to the board. They have an executive summary. They have the 7-Eleven committee, their Ed Code requirements, membership, and leadership. They have the background to the work on the committee. They have identified OUSD's history, then the board resolution. Then they have a tab for the work of the committee and the community input meetings. Then they have their recommendations under 5. And then they have their appendices. They've got quite a bit of information on under their appendices. So this is a different format. So let's go to their section 5 and look at how they presented their findings. Let's see, this is B, A.
Kelly, how many sites? How
Yes.
many sites does this cover? The 205 page.
Let's see. It looks like here they're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sites. And here's their calendar of, I guess, all the different schedule of meetings and topics that they covered. Then here is their recommendations. So it says here the committee identified a list of criteria to be used in identifying each of the 5 surplus properties for surplus or not. Then they included a table. Then they have 3 overarching principles as a result of the participation in the community engagement for the 5 vacant properties. 1, do not leave any property vacant. 2, keep the properties in public hands. And 3, where a joint lease is possible, prioritize that over surplusing for a long-term lease. And here they had a criteria for identifying the surplus properties. They've identified enrollment, vacancy, building site condition and financial outlook, location, suitability for district programs, community input, and then other considerations. And then they go into recommendations, surplus for reuse, talk about a summary of the final votes and determinations. Then let's see. Oh, and then they go into, in order to ease complex and often painful recommendations, the 7-Eleven committee strongly suggests that OUSD Board of Education considering adopting a policy that would allow for long-term ground lease while prohibiting the sale of the district land. This approach would ensure LUSD continues to have long-term stake in its portfolio of land. That's different. That's a different approach. And I believe these are the narratives of each site that they have listed. And then here's the table of their votes. And I believe they go according to each property, what the vote was for all properties. And I believe they have recommended surplus, not recommended for surplus, or abstain were the 3 voting types for each one of these properties. So you can see how the members voted. Then here's your recommendation on the process. Then the disposition process, the role of the board members, and the committee roles, committee members' roles, and then appendices are then listed. And I think this is where we get into like the bulk of all of what makes up this report. So really this report is only about 18 pages, but the appendices make it, you know, the 205. So are there any questions on any of the information that we just kind of scrolled through on this particular template?
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and go back to our video. Okay, so of the 3 that we've looked at, how are you all's feelings towards one or the other?
Well, we, of course, haven't had any committee meeting, community meeting.
Well, that's our next topic on the agenda.
It would be great if there from there, be sure to include it.
So you just want to ensure that we thought for the community meeting comments?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Maybe I need to turn my thing off.
I was just questioning to make sure that I understood that you just want to make sure that we allow for the insertion of the information for the community comments to be included. Okay. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions about what we've just looked at?
Well, who's going to prepare that?
Oh, well, my office is responsible for putting the draft together. And so the next steps are going to be, once you guys tell me which type of report you prefer, we'll go ahead and put the skeleton together. And then we as the group will then fill it with all the rest of the pertinent information together. So, you know, between myself, Karina, and Marcus and Sharon, we'll put together sort of the format. You guys will then have an opportunity to provide input on it. We then gather all the data from the community because that's the next topic on our agenda. We've got those dates already set and confirmed for the superintendent to participate. And then we then take their feedback, kind of decipher it and pick out the repetitive comments that we get from the two meetings, and then compile that together and add it as part of our documentation. And then we formalize what our recommendation would be. Yes,
My
Catherine.
recommendation would be to go to something shorter than the Oakland thing. The Oakland is so vast that it kind of obfuscates any clarity. I also
Sure.
think that the idea of having exhibits where you have an exhibit that has SB 98, an exhibit that has its clearly identified community response to the meetings. At the end, so you've got discrete things, which I guess kind of calls into number 2, which Karina was
Right.
very nicely found, but shorter is definitely better.
Okay.
Agree.
That's my view.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and take a quick show of hands. Who liked the Sweetwater the best? Which was the first one? Okay, so I've got Liz for Sweetwater. Who liked the I forgot the name of the
Poway.
district, the Poway. Yes.
Poway.
That way.
The power
Poway.
is the middle ground, and
Okay, so I have Liz,
is depending.
Kelly, and Teresa. Okay. So that's 3.
So Kelly, and this is just a funny thing, but you know, you could do polls in here in Google
No, I
Meet.
didn't realize that.
So if you were to click on the activities and put a quick poll together, everybody could go ahead and check, and then it would send you a email after the meeting's over that shows you who responded and what.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if
Well,
you want to
that
play with it, but it's just something that you could do.
Okay. Well, I will definitely take note of this for next time. But I think for the
It's the
thing that
act-
we're just doing today, we can
Yeah.
we can go with our very rudimentary method of what I'm doing
So
now.
mark me down for the Poway.
Okay. So that would be,
I'm with Liz, Kelly.
you're with
Just-
Liz on Sweetwater? Okay.
Kelly, I think I saw Sharon's hand for Poway as well.
Oh, Sharon with
That's correct. Thank you, Karina.
for Poway? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, there we have it. So it looks like we're going to pattern our report after the Poway, which is the middle of the road, which has the exhibits and very pertinent information in the first few pages. And then, you know what, I'll play around with it and see if we can meet a middle ground between the Sweetwater and the Poway so that everybody gets a little bit of something that they're happy with.
Yeah.
So I would like to go ahead and close out this particular item because we are kind of running close on time, but I wanted to give you guys information on the community meetings. So if we're looking back at our agenda, let's see. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So next on our agenda is number 5, which is the discuss the format of the community meeting. So we have our dates confirmed with the superintendent for his attendance on 12/15 and 1/7/2021. So 12/15 is just next week, which is right around the corner. And then 1/7/2021, and I'll make sure I update the number 1 on here. That we decided to do the 2 meetings. So in case everybody, since the 15th is so close, we have a second opportunity for folks to participate and provide input right after we come back from break. And that is the day after the board meeting. So hopefully, cross our fingers, we get a good turnout. But I wanted to talk to you all about how you want that community meeting to be formatted. And Karina, did you have any suggestions or have-tos that we have to abide by with regard to how we conduct the meeting? You're still on mute.
Sorry, I don't have any have-tos, but as this committee kind of discusses how they think the hearing will go, then maybe if I hear something, I will chime in. But for now, it's just basically the statute only requires this committee to obtain as much feedback from the community as possible, because the process is supposed to be led by feedback from the community. So
Okay. So I put together a very rudimentary outline that I shared with my bosses to take a look at yesterday. And I wanted to, I'll share that with you all as well. I'm trying to find it. I thought I had it pulled up, but I didn't have it readily available. Here we go. Oops. Where did it go? Well, anyway, the main 4 items that I wanted us to focus on was 1, we would start out with introductions for just a few minutes of, this, we would introduce ourselves. The superintendent would have an opportunity to say a few things. And then we then would lead into, the role of the 7-Eleven committee, what our charge was, why we are having this, give a very brief history of the Marshall site, tell folks, this is kind of where we are and how we got here. And then really offer an opportunity for the discussion of what the community would want to do with the site. And just kind of say, hey guys, we're here to talk about what do you all want to do and what do you all foresee as being the use of the site based on the information that we've provided to you. And then just kind of let them talk and go for about 30 minutes, and we'll have someone who's going to be documenting what those wishes are. And then we're also going to have a moderator to kind of prompt and kind of, if we have somebody that's going on a little too long, to just say, hey, okay, we're limiting this to X amount of minutes, and if someone wants to continue on, but we also we'll be mindful of time. And then we can close the meeting with thanking the community for their input, letting them know that this information is being documented and that it'll be included in a final report that will be sent to the board. And we'll close out. Do you guys have any suggestions or things that you want to add to that? Yes, Kathleen.
I think the hardest thing for the community is going to be to have them understand that really the board has decided the school district does not want to assume risk.
Okay.
And so I think that is a leading point, because that's something that is hard to argue with. You want your kids to be able to walk to school, or you want to be able to use it for a special program. But if there is risk, are you willing to assume the risk? And the school board has said no. That to me has been the guiding principle in this particular discussion.
So I think we can actually talk about that when we talk about how we got to where we are with the Marshall site, and maybe make that our key point of, focus, to say that we're here because the board has, made a decision, and now we're tasked to provide a recommendation based on the decision that they made, and then lead from there. So then, like you say, there's no There's no argument. It's kind of like this is where we are and this is where we're going from. So
Yeah.
Yes, Jeff. I see your hand is raised.
I was just going to concur with Kathleen. I think we need to make it clear because I live fairly close to it. I taught in that community. They like the fact that there's a school there attached to the park. And so if we leave it open to them without giving them that background that the school district doesn't want to assume the responsibility, I think that they're going to be pushing to open a school there and not to sell it to more houses going in the neighborhood.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, Karina, isn't there precedent that like the city has like first dibs on that particular site because they they own the park right next to it? So if we do choose to sell, we have to give them sort of first right of refusal, right?
Yes, so it's not necessarily because they own the site next to it, but because any park and rec district gets first dibs under the statutes.
Okay. Okay. So, and is that something we have to disclose in our discussion?
By statute, no, but it's up to the committee how much information you want to give them. I think in a prior meeting, somebody has suggested kind of an aerial overview of the campus, maybe something like that. Plus, some of the data that this committee has looked at, including maybe even the enrollment or something like that, so that they have data as well and can provide some feedback.
Your hand go up.
That's okay. Let Teresa go first off.
Okay. Yes, Therese.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's an important part of the history that we should cover. We can distinctly, but I think it should be included.
Okay. Let me go ahead and make my notes.
I also think that if they currently enjoy the park and there's potential for them to see this park maybe even expand, that could be an attractive thing for the community.
Okay. Okay. So do you guys want to have in the presentation a slide of like pros and cons for them to sort of ponder and we kind of lead them in directions, or we just want to let them just kind of say whatever they want to say?
I think it's not an idea to have pros and cons.
Okay.
Yeah, PowerPoint will be good to lead that discussion.
But you don't want that to become the whole presentation. You'd have to limit that to allow for community response. And
right.
Sometimes when you get a slide up, who's ever presenting the slide, it goes on and on and on.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean,
Well, you know what?
object,
I'll put something together, and of course, before we present anything, we of course can go through it ourselves and sort of tweak it so that we don't have any stumbling stones or things that will cause us to get stuck on a particular subject matter. So yes, Jeff.
I would think as simple as we could make this. I think we talked about the couple reasons for coming to this decision, and then leave it at that, as opposed to opening it up with pros and cons and a bigger conversation. I think it sounds like the purpose of this community forum is just to get feedback from the community. And so I think to say, this is how we've gotten to this point. What would you like to see happen to this property?
Okay.
And then just allow the conversation to go. Yeah.
And just let it develop organically. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, the last thing on our agenda, is there any other comments before we move on to the next item on our agenda?
I have a question, Kelly.
Yes,
this
Bill?
public meeting is in 5 days?
Yes, the first one is in 5 days.
And we're expected to participate, is that correct?
There is, Karina, please correct me if I'm wrong. You are expected to participate, but you don't have to actively participate. So you can be present and, field questions or potentially offer, comments based on your participation, but it's not something you're required to like, hey, Felix, you're going to do slide 7,
Right,
you know.
right. Would it make sense for the group to appoint a sort of spokesperson?
It is totally up to you guys.
I mean, what I was going to say is I was going to volunteer Therese as a spokesperson for the group. I thought that. But anyway.
It's totally up to you guys.
This is a virtual meeting, right, Kelly?
Yes, it is. It will definitely be a virtual meeting, and we will all be in the comfort of.
I think there's a question.
Actually, I think the question Jeff just had is the meeting is only for 1 hour, and it's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it will be, you know, there'll be a link on the district website. And as I said, we're going to have somebody who's going to moderate and someone who's going to be documenting and taking minutes. It will be televised or streamed. And we have gotten a commitment from the superintendent that he will attend and offer up some comments at the very beginning.
Can you send a link out to the committee members?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once I wanted to make sure we had this meeting today and finalize everything before we send it out, but I do believe it's going to be going out tomorrow, and people will have an opportunity to also, if they have questions, if they can't attend, they can go ahead and submit their questions directly to us, and we'll have those available for us to be able to answer at the meeting. Okay. Well, if you guys want to shoot me an email after you've had an opportunity to look at your calendars and let me know if you're going to be in attendance, I can just make note of that. And then the next item on our agenda is our next date has been set for January 14th from 4 to 5. And that's directly after we've had our 2 community meetings where we can then review the information that we've compiled and put together our draft report that we would send to the board on January 20th for their review. And then any comments that we get back from them or any feedback from additional folks, we can then incorporate that information into our final report, which would then be sent to the board in February. Okay. Is that date fine with everyone?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This was a really productive meeting, and I apologize. I don't mean to rush off, but I have another meeting that I have to go to with the cabinet that they're probably already on saying, well, why is she late? But I really enjoyed the conversation that we had today, and I think that we're really on a good track to have some solid information for us to present. So let's see what happens on Tuesday in the community meeting. So anything else?
All right.
All right, guys. You all have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. Take
Thank
care.
you.